Thank you very much.
Congratulations, firstly, on all your success in the Globes and in the awards.
Thank you.
Congratulations, well deserved. I think you'll agree. So to start by, I wanted to ask you, I mean, A, what made you come up with the idea of telling this story, but also what was it that made you tell it this way? Because it's a very interesting style of writing, and it's not at all what we'd expect. It's not what I expected when I saw the movie, and why I liked it so much. It's not a biopic, it's something else. It's very quirky. How did you come up with that?
Well, I felt like first of all, thank you for staying. I didn't feel like any of the characters were conventional. And I felt like the story itself wasn't just one thing. I felt like it was really funny and really tragic and really crazy and true-ish, depending on whose point of view you listen to. I wanted all the characters, I felt like all of them in real life were very wrong-headed and very rebellious, and I wanted the screenplay to be wrong-headed and rebellious, so I wanted to include all those things that they tell you can't do in a script, like split screens, and at one point Allison Janney's character complains about the screenplay, and she says her storyline's disappearing, and it doesn't really make sense.
But it
works because it's wrong-headed and it's rebellious. So that, the style of it, I like. I didn't think it had to be just one thing. I thought it could be funny and tragic and all of that. The way that I came up with it, I had just written a Christmas movie, and I knew I wanted to write something that was totally different. My niece was over, and we happened to watch this great documentary on 30 for 30 that Annette Burstein did about Tonya Harding. And I thought, well, nothing doesn't say Christmas like Tonya Harding. But there were just elements in it that I thought were interesting about class in America and the disenfranchised and what we tell women they're supposed to be, and truth and the perception of truth, which is something that I keep writing about, so I'm clearly working something out. And so I went on the Tonya Harding website to find out if the life rights were available, and I called the number for her agent, and it was in Motel 6.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm so in. I'm doing it. And then I tracked down Tonya Harding, and I tracked down Jeff Gillespie, and I just sort of wormed my way in and got them to agree to interviews, even though I've never interviewed anybody.
Separately.
Very, very, very separately. And then once I did, their stories were so wildly contradictory. They just remembered nothing the same. And I thought, well, that's my way in. I'll just put everybody's point of view up there and then let the audience decide what's what.
Mm. And have you had feedback from both of them, either of them?
Yeah.
What do they think?
Well, Tonya has seen the movie. She saw it, I think, a week before Toronto, and I mean, it must be just so weird to watch, your life whittled down to 2 hours, let alone, the most traumatic events. But she said that she laughed and she cried. She loved Allison Janney. She said, she loved Margot. She just, naturally she loved Margot. But there were things she didn't like about it. Mainly things that came from Jeff's point of view.
Yeah.
But she was at the premiere, and I've never seen her so happy. It was actually really moving.
That's great.
Yeah, Jeff hasn't seen it yet.
No, right.
No, but we're setting it up for her.
And Craig, how did you take that interesting script and that with that slant on it and come up with this unique visual style that you came up with for the movie?
I mean, Stephen's script I'd never read anything like it. It was 265 scenes and 110 pages, and that's incredible. Usually there's maybe 150 scenes, so the rapid pace firing of it and the multiple points of view and the contradictory points of view and all of that, I couldn't really find a lot of references for it. Maybe To Die For, but that's pretty linear in terms of a storyline, and they don't contradict each other. And so I sort of had to just rummage through a bunch of things, and but just from the energy of the script, I knew I wanted it to be incredibly energetic with the camera. And we actually designed it so, first we shot on film, which was a fight, but we managed to get that. And
it's hard. It's very, very hard to be allowed to shoot on film nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more expensive, and there's more things that can go wrong.
Right.
Particularly like the focus, because you don't get to see the focus really to the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be really screwed, particularly with these ice skating sequences we were doing.
Yeah.
But there's a definite look to it that we loved. But the energy of the actors, I wanted to almost feel like we couldn't keep up with them.
Yeah.
And they were so spontaneous. So there's no marks on the ground, and it's almost every take is different, and the camera's in a different place, and they're allowed to have that freedom to go wherever they want. So that was part of the energy of it. And then we added in a lot of music. I sat down with my DP, Nicholas Kautz-Kantanis, who's a Belgian DP. I'd never met before. Amazingly, we had a very similar sensibility. And we shortlisted this whole film, and I wanted to have a lot of songs in there. There's, I think, close to 50 songs in the film, and whenever, just for that sort of that euphoric and chaos and the energy of it, and that juxtaposition that you'd see, that I'm a big fan of Scorsese's, and whenever he would juxtapose the music where you see something really violent and there'd be Frank Sinatra against it, and then suddenly it gives it a whole nother emotion that you're just not familiar with, or the contradictory feelings coming up. So I like, trying to play with that in the chaos of these relationships. And so we designed all this music, and then had to do all these camera moves to go with the music.
Yeah. How do you do that massive long take where you see the husband appearing in all the different rooms, and then we end up driving down the street? How was that?
That was, when we were shortlisting my DP, it actually wasn't in the script. There was this moment where Tonya leaves, and he suggested that we should really have a moment here to really show us his edge. She's done. And he had this idea of pulling out from the bedroom and out of the house, like it's almost like her spirit. And on the day we're shooting the shot, and the camera goes by the kitchen, and I'm like, it'd be cool to have him in the kitchen too, in a different outfit. And then we go through the living room, like, let's put him in the living room as well. So we kept adding it in, and it's just a sleight of hand, like you wiping through door frames, or that end shot is actually going through the kitchen. Is just a very distinct blend between the two, from a techno crane that's sticking into the house on an ATV that pulls out and then goes down the street.
Oh, it was on a quad or something.
Yeah.
Well, it's very.
But it was a spontaneous shot in a way.
I love it. It felt real to me, and I loved it. It was bamboozling and beautiful. I loved it. And what about the casting? How did you decide on who should play what parts?
I wrote Lavana for Allison Janney.
What does that mean?
Well, I know her real well. And she does walk around with a bird on her shoulder and kick children off chairs. No, I've known Allison for more than half of my usable life. We knew I used to be an actor, and I studied at the Neighborhood Playhouse in New York, and so did she. And so I've always known how really great she is, and I've always written parts for her, but she's never been able to play them. And on this one, I was so frustrated that she never got to do it. It was a spec script, which meant nobody was paying me to write it, but if there was heat on it, then I could make some demands, and there was heat on it. So I said that Allison Janney is playing the part that I wrote for her, and I want it in writing, or it's deal breaker.
Right.
But I kind of said that before Allison had even read the script. She would do it. And then,
She's gonna do it, right?
yeah, I just gambled. And then my neighbor, who works at a management company, just heard me talking about Tonya Harding and Jeff Gillespie, and she wanted to read the script. And so I gave it to her, and she said, who would be really good for Tonya? That would be Margot Robbie. And I said, well, we're not there yet. I haven't even picked a producing partner. This was early on. And she said, well, can I give it to her? And I was like, wow. Can I stop you? Yeah, you can give it to her. And then the day after I partnered with Brian Uncless to produce the movie, we got a phone call saying Margot wanted to meet.
Wow.
So, we had two of them before we even had a director.
Right, right. Oh, that's great. That's amazing. Well, I loved it. Does anyone here have questions they'd like to ask?